What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown. This Saturday, June 28th, on the Zone pay-per-view, Jake Paul is going to be facing off against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., but on the undercard, we got Tevin against Floyd Schofield, okay? And to me, personally, this is the most intriguing fight on this card. All right, this fight is not for any kind of title, but both of these guys are high-ranking fighters at 135. Floyd Schofield, a young undefeated fighter, 18 wins with 12 knockouts, no defeats, no draws. He is 22 years of age, slightly taller, about an inch taller, a couple inches in reach advantage. He's going to be facing against Tevin Farmer, the seasoned vet, 34 years old, 33 wins with 8 knockouts, and a bunch of losses, 8 losses, a draw. We've seen him, you know, he's been in some really close fights recently. All 3 of his last fights were losses, but he did well in all 3. This guy that lives by me, he got the damn Lamborghini and he's driving it up and down the street all day. Anyway, I like this fight a lot, and I think it is a 50-50 fight. And if you look at the odds, Floyd Schofield is a slight favorite to win this fight. I was actually surprised how close it was, because it was the last thing I checked. I already did all my film study that I wanted to do, and I decided to say, all right, let me look what the odds are looking like, and I was shocked to see that they also had it as close as I think this fight is. It makes sense for Floyd to have or be the favorite to win, because he's younger, he's fresh, he's undefeated, he's a bigger fighter, he's a bigger puncher. You know, he's very explosive, all that good stuff. And plus, Tevin Farmer has been coming off a few losses. But when you look at the styles and when you look at Farmer and what he brings to the table versus what Floyd brings to the table, I think it makes it a very close fight. Especially if this is a fight that goes the distance, because in my opinion, I think it's pretty clear that Tevin Farmer is the superior boxer between the two by a stretch, you know. And I wanted to talk more about that, more so than just giving you the normal breakdown that I do, because Floyd Schofield, I've been spending some time the last day or two just looking at his older fights and trying to figure out how I think this fight is going to go. I went back, I watched a little bit of the Alberto Mercado fight, because Mercado's a southpaw, and we know that Tevin Farmer's a southpaw. I watched the Rene Herron fight. I rewatched that entire fight, because that is Schofield's most recent fight, and he was knocked down in the 11th round of that fight. All right. I also watched the Haskell Rhodes fight. I rewatched that fight. I did see that fight live, because I think Rhodes has like a slick style. I know he went the distance. He was tough. I think he has a similar style to Tevin Farmer, even though he's not a southpaw. Right, so I went back and watched those fights. Tevin Farmer, I didn't have to go way back because I watched him for years. But I watched a little bit of his recent fights, because I am doing film study for William Zepeda as well. So the way I look at it is Floyd Schofield, and I want to talk a lot about him because I believe that this is the first time I'm doing an actual breakdown of him, but I've been watching him for some years now. When I think of Floyd, when I look at him, the pros in Floyd Schofield, you know, obviously he's young, he's fresh. He's a good size at 135. He's strong, he's powerful, he's explosive. He has a lot of ability, and he has a lot of tools, okay? He could switch. He has good angles. He's a decent counter puncher. He has good hand speed. I think overall he's a good athlete, right? And this is a fighter that was supposed to fight Shakur Stevenson. Okay, this was supposed to happen earlier this year. These guys were going to fight for Shakur Stevenson's title. In my opinion, I thought the fight was a little too soon for Schofield. But if he's a top contender already, it makes sense. Go for it. You know what I mean? If you're a top contender and you're up there to fight for a title against one of the best in the game, you might as well go for it. You know. But I didn't think that this fight was the right time for him, you know, and that's because of just what I've seen from him. I'm still thinking that he's really learning. I do think that he still needs a little bit more time to develop, you know, but at the end of the day, if you have an opportunity, go for it. But that fight was supposed to happen, but he was sick. That fight happened in Saudi Arabia. I believe he pulled out the week of the fight. He was hospitalized. And Shakur Stevenson went on to fight Josh Padley, right? Stopped him to the body. Tevin Farmer, similar style. Tevin is very good defender. He's not a big puncher, obviously, with only 8 knockouts. But he has sneaky power, in my opinion. When I look at Tevin, I think he's a pretty durable fighter. I know he has been stopped twice. Stopped in his first professional fight. Stopped years ago against Jorge Pedraza. But I'm not really. He's fought bigger punchers since then. And he's gone the distance with all of those guys. I think he's a good defender, like I said. I think one of the key things with his defense, very slick fighter, southpaw, uses the Philly shell. He's from Philly, but he's a master of that Philly shell game. One thing is he's very good at rolling punches off his shoulders. He's really good at seeing the punches coming and turning with the punches, slipping shots. He has a really good inside game. And he's quick. He has very fast hands. He's a very good counter puncher. But he also has sneaky power too. He's a guy that knows how to really mix his power shots in there with the flurries. He's just not loading up. He's sneaky, fast power. One thing I dislike about Tevin Farmer is I think he holds a little too much in a lot of fights. I've seen a ton of his fights, both old and new, where he's just holding a little too much. And in my opinion, it takes away from the fight. It's one thing to smother your opponent's offense, but it's another thing when you're just locking in. He's had points taken from him because of the fact that he was holding a little too much in his fights. All right, but overall, very crafty, very slick type of fighter. And he showed that he could go the distance with bigger guys with bigger power and take their shots, continue on, counter them, knows how to take some of their strengths away. That's what I know of Tevin Farmer. But he's more of a defensive fighter that doesn't waste any punches. Okay, he's a very accurate puncher. Again, very good counter puncher. So when I think of Floyd, the problem I have with Floyd, and I'm going to say this, and you guys can leave your response. It's no hate here. Sometimes I think Floyd, because he has a lot of tools, he has a lot of abilities, I think he over-adjusts in his fight. That's the problem I had. And with the fights that's going on, as recent as his most recent fights, I still see the same thing that I seen 5, 6, 7 fights ago. And I'm trying to, I really don't know, and I believe that fighters that come up in different eras, they are influenced by other fighters. Once upon a time, a lot of fighters, even to this day, wanted to fight like Floyd Mayweather. There's a lot of fighters over there in the Philippines that started, you see a lot of Philippines fighters that fought like Manny Pacquiao. It's just a lot of fighters are influenced by Terrence Crawford. Yes, we always had switchers, but we have so many switchers now, and Floyd Schofield is one of them. There's a lot of fighters that's being influenced by some of the top fighters in the game with every generation. Floyd Schofield is a switcher. But Floyd Schofield doesn't just switch. He changes his style throughout the fight, and I've seen guys be irky jerky. I've seen guys where no matter win or lose, most fighters just don't look good against. I think Madrimov is one of those guys. I don't think Crawford looked good against him. I don't think Ortiz looked good against him. It's just that he has an irky jerky style that's hard to box against. And you know what I mean? It's hard to deal with. You know what I mean? But when it comes to Floyd Schofield, right? When I'm watching him fight, even in the most recent fight with Renee, he's literally starting out as a righty in the first round. Second round, he's starting as a lefty. He's fighting as a lefty. Third round, he's using the jab a lot. He goes back to righty, but he's using the jab a lot. And then he stops using it. And it seems like from every round to the end of the fight, it was a 12-round fight, he's changing throughout each round. And I'm like, there are certain points in each round where something's working for him. And he just completely changes. And I'm trying to understand, like, why is he working towards his strength? Now, I wasn't listening to the corner because I didn't have the sound on. I was just kind of like just watching it, and I was like doing other things. But I don't know what's being said in his core. I know his dad trains him, but I believe that Floyd Schofield is an over adjuster. I think it's very important at times, especially if you're having issues and trouble, you should make adjustments. And I think Floyd has the ability to fight any type of fight. But you have to know what kind of fight to fight your opponent, and I think it's just too much going on, and a lot of stuff is unnecessary, and I think it takes away from his real ability. It's like he's a boxer puncher sometimes, he's a brawler sometimes, he's like trying to be slick at times, he's bouncing around, moving a lot at times, and um he does things that are just counterproductive to me, and it takes away. He makes fights closer than what they need to be, you know. Again, adjusting is important, and he has the ability to adjust. But you got to adjust for your opponent based on how the fight is going. You know what I mean? If it's going in your favor, work on what you're doing. The guy has a good jab, but sometimes he doesn't use it at all. He leads with power punches a lot. And sometimes he's like, he's like overextending with the power shots, or he's telegraphing his punches at times. And it just looks like a mess. And again, I don't want to like diss him. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. You know what I mean? It's a mess. And I kind of like moving forward when I lose this weekend. I would like him to just structure, like have a better structure on how to fight consistently in a fight, because it's just too much mixing them. It's all over the place, and that's with the flaws, the defensive holes in his game, the off balance punches. You know what I mean? His feet be in the wrong place sometimes. But sometimes he does things like sometimes he'll pivot and throw punches from different angles where it's unexpected, which is great. Like I seen like a little bit of Emmanuel Navarrete in his style too. But it's a lot of flaws in his game. And I think if he were to become a little bit economical with his punches, not loading up on so many punches, and just stick to the basics a little bit more with his ability, I think he'd be good. Defensively, I don't think he's that good. I think he can definitely slip and move certain shots here and there. I think he's a good counter puncher at times. But there's a lot of times where I think it's more bad than good, you know? And going into a fight with Shakur Stevenson, I didn't like it, not at this stage, but I understand it. But with Tevin Farmer, I don't really think it's that much easier, because Tevin Farmer to me is probably, even at 34, might be slightly quicker. But it's not always about hand speed. It's about the timing on when you're throwing the punches. And Tevin Farmer doesn't just make you miss, he counters. Also, let me add, Tevin Farmer is a better inside fighter. And he's coming off really, really tough wins, tough fights. Even though he lost those fights, they were pretty good performances. You know what I mean? Like Murataya, he was winning a good amount of those earlier rounds. He definitely had enough rounds in that fight. He probably won like 5 rounds at least in that fight against Murataya. You know what I mean? And then William Zepeda, with all the volume from Zepeda, all the volume, all the body shots, he was still able to take them. He's very good at defending. A lot of people don't notice, but in the Zepeda fight, a lot of those punches that he was throwing to the body was not landing. A lot of those punches were getting blocked by his arms and his gloves. You got to pay attention to Farmer. He does little tricky things to make sure he's not getting the full impact of the punches that's getting thrown and landed on him. So with Floyd, This is the thing, and I'm basing it on Farmer and how he's been looking lately. Floyd doesn't want to overwork himself, because if you don't stop this guy, right, you're gonna end up like William Cepeda, where you're struggling later in a fight because you're gonna burn yourself out. And Floyd does not have the cardio that William Cepeda does. He has decent cardio, but he doesn't have the cardio that William Cepeda does. Not only that, but if the fight is at a slower pace, Tevin Farmer is gonna just box and counter. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's the fight that Floyd Schofield wants neither. So either way, I think Floyd, if this is just a boxing match where it involves more countering and pot shouting and trap setting and stuff like that, if it's one of those kind of fights, I would have to lean towards Tevin Farmer, as long as that the pace of the fight stays that way. I think if Floyd starts to be more aggressive, like a William Cepeda, he may have more success if he's drawing combinations and stuff, but it's also going to leave him open to get countered too. And not for nothing, seeing that Floyd has got dropped in that fight, seeing that he kind of got dropped in the Mercado fight that I was just watching against the Southpaw. They didn't count it, but later in the fight, it was a right hook or something, that a sweeping right hook that landed against Schofield, I think. And it was a similar shot than the one that Renee landed that knocked him down. And again, Floyd threw a very wide left hook, and Renee had just drew the hook at the same time, but it was shorter, it was sharper, and it was on the inside, and he clipped him and then put him down. It was a flash knockdown. Floyd wasn't hurt, but still, it was a knockdown. Tevin Farmer is better, than Renee Haron, than a Mercado. I think he's better than some of these other guys that Schofield has fought. So with all of that being said, um, even if Floyd Schofield is being aggressive, Farmer is used to fighting guys that's gonna be super aggressive towards him. Um, what I'm gonna say is this. I think that Tevin Farmer might actually pull off the upset in this fight, and I'm leaning towards it. And I'm probably gonna put a little money on him to do it. I think Floyd Schofield has a chance of winning. If the fight is a close fight, being that he's undefeated, Farmer normally doesn't win on the cards with these close fights. So I'm expecting it to go to Schofield if it's a close fight, because that's the way things has been for Farmer recently. I also think that Schofield has a puncher's chance. He is a puncher. He does tend to get a little aggressive. I think he needs to straighten his shots a little bit more, because Tevin Farmer likes to lean back at times. I think if he's straight and get that full extension on the right hand or the left hand or whatever position he's going to be in, I think that's the way to go. Throw those hooks, throw the combinations on the inside, but mix it. He comes in, he likes to come in, throw the left hand, swivel jab. He does that kind of thing. So I think he has things that's going to work for him as far as gathering points and stuff and hitting Farmer, who's a good defender. But as far as hitting him flush clean to a point where it may hurt him, it might be a little difficult for him. And I don't want Floyd to burn himself out from frustration and just trying to get a knockout. I hope he's not going in this fight trying to get a knockout, because the harder you throw at this guy, the more likely he's going to counter you and hit you back. You know what I mean? So with all that being said, I think there's certain key things that Floyd can do in order to win, definitely with activity, definitely being more physical and stuff like that. But Farmer is used to being a guy fighting guys at a higher level that's more proven, and them being aggressive too, them having power too, them being bigger than him. He's already been here. He's been here even before this division. You know what I'm saying? So I'm leaning towards Tevin Farmer to win. All right. I've watched their fights back to back, and when I do, I just seem like to me that Tevin Farmer is a better boxer than me. And I think he has enough power, not a knockout artist, but enough power to at least buzz Floyd Schofield and gain some respect from him, if anything. And the slower the fight is, slower the pace, I think it leads towards Tevin Farmer favor. So I got Tevin Farmer winning this one. I'm probably gonna throw money on the money line and just do it straight up. I'm not expecting a knockout for Farmer, but if he is to drop Schofield, I would not be surprised. Or even if you were to stop him, I would not be surprised because I really don't know how good Floyd Schofield is. What I will say in his defense is lately we've been getting a lot of these guys that finally steps up and they've looked way better in a fight where they finally stepped up. And that's where we see the best. So maybe Floyd was fighting on the level of his opposition. Again, he fought Rene Huron. He switched his style up a bunch of times. He switched his stance a bunch of times. He was all over the place. But maybe some of these fighters just tend to fight on the level of their opponent. And now that he's fighting Tevin Farmer, he might fight better. All right. But my money is going to be on Tevin Farmer pulling off the upset for this Saturday. All right. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button for me if you enjoy the content. And I'll see you guys soon. Y'all have a good day. Peace.